He almost rode past her. The storm was that bad, the kind that made shapes out of nothing, made shadows into objects, and objects into nothing at all. His horse had already spooked twice, and he was done investigating things that turned out to be wind. But then she moved, just once. A hand lifting maybe 3 inches out of the snow. He was off his horse before he knew he'd decided to move. She grabbed his coat when he reached her, both hands the grip of someone using the last thing they had, and she said it so quietly he almost didn't catch it over the wind. "Don't leave me here." And something in him broke open that had been sealed for 5 years. Subscribe. Now drop your city in the comments. Let's see how far this story goes. The winter of 1886 came to Montana Territory the way the worst things always came, not gradually, not with warning enough to be useful, but fast and total, and with the specific intention of reminding anyone who had gotten comfortable that the mountain did not make accommodations. Ethan Callahan had been riding back from the Ellis property when the storm turned serious. He had known it was coming. He had felt the quality of the afternoon air shift 2 hours before the specific drop that came before a real system, and he had said his goodbyes to Margaret Ellis quickly and started home. But the storm had moved faster than he anticipated, which meant he was still 3 miles from his own fence line when the visibility went from poor to almost nothing. He was not afraid. He had ridden this stretch of Montana country for 15 years, in conditions as bad as this and worse. He knew the land under the snow as well as he knew the layout of his own house, knew where it rose and where it flattened, and where the creek ran even under 3 feet of ice. His horse, a bay gelding named Henry, who had more sense than most men Ethan had met, knew it too. They had been partners long enough that their communication in conditions like this was minimal and efficient. Ethan gave direction. Henry gave trust, and between them, they moved through the storm without requiring more information than what was available. He was concentrating on the direction, and the horse, and the specific piece of ground directly in front of him, when Henry stopped. Not the cautious stop of an animal scenting something interesting. The hard stop. The all 4 feet planted stop that meant Henry had decided something was wrong and was not moving until the situation resolved itself. Ethan pulled up short and stayed still and listened. Wind, snow against his coat, his own breathing. Henry's. Nothing else. He was about to press the horse forward. Henry occasionally made errors, though rarely when he saw it. A shape in the snow, not a rock. Rocks in this country did not have that outline. There was something about the shape that was wrong for a natural feature, too irregular in some ways, and too regular in others. He had seen enough things buried in enough winters to know the difference. He dismounted. He tied Henry to the nearest thing that would hold, which was not very near, and he moved toward the shape. She was face down in the snow. Or mostly face down. One arm had been extended forward, as if she had been crawling, and had stopped mid-motion, which was the worst sign he knew when it came to someone caught in the cold. Crawling meant she had been conscious. Stopped meant she had stopped being conscious or close to it. He got to her, and he turned her over, which required more effort than it should have, because her coat had gotten heavy with accumulated snow. Her face was wrong. Not wrong in a permanent way, not yet, but wrong in the way that faces went wrong when they had been cold too long, the specific pallor that was not quite the color of skin in any living state. Her eyes were closed. Her lips had a quality he did not like. Her hands, when he pulled them toward him to check, were the hands of someone who had been in this storm for a very long time. He did what he knew how to do. He checked her breathing, which was there. Faint. Present. He checked her pulse at her neck, which was there. Slow. Present. She was alive. She was going to stay alive if he moved in the next 2 minutes. He reached under her shoulders to lift her. Her eyes opened. Not fully, barely the specific crack of eyelids that had frozen at the edges and were fighting to function. But they opened, and what was in them was not confusion exactly. It was the specific awareness of someone who knows they are in danger and has been fighting to remain conscious enough to do something about it. She grabbed his coat, both hands. She had nothing left in most of her body, but those hands had the grip of someone who understood that this was the last action available to her and who was going to execute it completely. She said 3 words. "Don't leave me." And then, because those 3 words were apparently everything she had been holding herself conscious to say, here. Ethan Callahan had not cried in 5 years. He did not cry now, but something happened in his chest that was close enough to the same thing that the distinction felt academic. Because he had heard those words before. Not from this woman, from his wife. From Anna, 4 years ago, in the last hours of the fever that took her, when she had been too weak to complete full sentences, and had reached for his hand, and said something that he had spent 4 years reconstructing from fragments and silence. He had never been certain what she had been trying to say. He was certain now. He picked the woman up. He carried her to Henry, which was not simple. She was not small, and he had been riding for 3 hours in a storm, and his arms were not at their best. But he managed it with the specific efficiency of a man who has learned that difficulty was not an excuse for not doing what was necessary. Henry accepted the unusual cargo with the stoic tolerance that had made him Ethan's best working partnership for 12 years. Ethan mounted behind her, which put her weight against him, and his body heat around her, which was what she needed more than anything else he could provide in the next 2 miles. He pushed Henry forward. He talked to the horse low and constant, more for the rhythm of it than because Henry needed direction. Henry knew where home was and was already moving there, but the talking was something to do and something to focus on, and something that kept the specific quality of those 3 words from becoming the only thing in Ethan's head. Don't leave me here. He did not leave her. The ranch house was lit from the inside when he came through his own gate, which meant Margaret Ellis had beaten him home. This was not unusual. Margaret had a key because Margaret had been helping Ethan manage the practical reality of his life since Anna died, and she came by twice a week to check on things that a man who spent most of his time on horseback sometimes failed to check on. He called before he was fully to the porch. "Margaret, Margaret, I need help." The door opened before the echo of his voice had died. Margaret Ellis was 62 and had the bearing of a woman who had spent 40 of those years in Montana and had therefore seen a great deal that required an immediate and practical response. She took one look at what was in his arms. "Get her inside," she said. "Now." He got her inside. What followed was 2 hours of the kind of focused, urgent work that left no room for thought about anything except the task. And that was, Ethan understood dimly, probably the reason he was able to do it. Margaret directed, and Ethan executed, and between them, they worked on warming the woman in the way that you warmed someone who had been seriously cold without doing the things that would make it worse. Margaret had done this before, more than once in 40 Montana winters. "Her feet," Margaret said. "Check her feet." He checked. "Not black," he said. "Toes," she said. "Pink or working toward it." "Good," Margaret said. "Her hands, same," he said. Margaret made a sound that was not quite relief, but was adjacent to it. "She was lucky," she said. "Another hour and we'd be having a different conversation." "I know," he said. "You found her on the mountain road. 3 miles south of your property line," he said. "Face down in the snow." Margaret looked at the woman they had been working on, at the face that was beginning to look like something other than the wrong color it had been, at the coat that was now hanging by the stove, and which Margaret had gone through with the practical thoroughness of someone who understood that whatever the woman had been carrying was information they were going to need. "Ethan," Margaret said. He looked at her. She was holding something, a document of some kind, folded heavy paper, the kind that important things got written on. "She had this inside her coat," Margaret said, "against her skin." He took it. He did not open it. He looked at it, at the weight of it, at the quality of the paper, at the fact that she had been carrying it in the place where you carried something you were not willing to lose, regardless of what happened to everything else. "Don't open it," Margaret said. He hadn't intended to. "Put it where she can find it when she wakes up," Margaret said. "If it's what I think it is, she's going to want to know it's there." "What do you think it is?" he said. "I think," Margaret said carefully, "that somebody sent men out in a blizzard to find a woman who's carrying that." She paused. And I think those men are not the kind of men you send out when the thing you're looking for is the woman. He looked at her. They're the kind you send out when the thing you're looking for is what she has, Margaret said. He set the document on the table where it would be visible from the bed. He sat down. He had not sat down in 2.5 hours. His body informed him of this with the specific directness of bodies that had been asked to perform beyond their immediate capacity. Go sleep, Margaret said. I'll watch her. I'll watch, he said. Ethan, she said. I'll watch, he said again. Margaret looked at him for a moment. She had known him for 6 years. She had known Anna for 4 of those years. She had been at the ranch when Anna died, had been one of the 2 people who had sat with Ethan through those first incomprehensible days when the world had continued to operate in a completely normal way, while he was trying to understand how that was possible. She recognized the look on his face. All right, she said. She sat too on the other side of the room because watching him watch the stranger was something she was not going to delegate either. The woman woke at 3 in the morning. Not dramatically, not the gasp and sit-up of someone returning from a dramatic distance. She came back slowly, which was the right way to come back from serious cold. Her eyes opened, and they stayed open, and she looked at the ceiling for a long time before she moved them. Ethan was in the chair when this happened. He had not slept. He said when he saw her eyes were open and tracking, "You're at the Callahan Ranch. You're safe. You're warm." He said it quietly because loud was not what the situation needed, and he had learned in years of dealing with animals that had come through difficult things that quiet was almost always the right register. "Do you know your name?" A pause. "Clara," she said. Her voice was what he would have expected rough, thin, the voice of someone whose throat had been through a serious cold. "Clara Whitmore." "All right," he said. "Clara, do you know where you were?" "On the road," she said. "I was on the road and the storm—" She stopped. Started again. "My horse." "I'll look for your horse in the morning," he said, "when the storm breaks." She was quiet for a moment. Then, the document. He reached to the table. He held it up where she could see it from the bed. The breath she let out was the specific release of someone who has been holding tension they didn't know they were holding. "All right," he said again. He set it back on the table. "Rest now. We can talk in the morning." "The men," she started. "No men followed you through that storm," he said. "Nobody was going to follow anything through that storm." "You did," she said. "I live here," he said. "I was going home." She looked at him, even from across the room in the low light of a fire that had been built to provide warmth more than illumination. She looked at him with a quality of attention that was not what he expected from someone who had been half dead 3 hours ago. Alert, taking him in. "You could have left me," she said. "No," he said. "I couldn't." She looked at him for a moment longer. Then she closed her eyes. She slept. He did not. He sat in the chair, and he watched her breathe, which was the thing he needed to verify. So he told himself that was why he was watching, and he thought about what Margaret had said, about the document, about the kind of men you sent when the thing you were looking for was not the woman. He thought about what it meant to carry something valuable inside your coat against your skin through a blizzard. He thought about 3 words said with the last available strength. He thought about Anna, not with the weight that he usually thought about her, not with the specific pain of something unresolved and unrequited and never to be addressed, with something more direct, with the specific acknowledgement of a thing that had happened and that had mattered and that he had been carrying, which was what you did when you lost someone, and which was what he would keep doing, but which was not. He was understanding this slowly, in the specific way that things were understood in the middle of the night, in a chair by a fire, while a stranger breathed in the bed across the room, not the only thing he was ever going to do. He had found her in the snow. He had brought her home. He was going to find out who had sent men through a blizzard to take from her the thing she had kept against her skin. He was going to do something about it. This was not the thought of a man who had any particular plan. It was the thought of a man who had felt something unlock in his chest when a stranger grabbed his coat and said 3 words, and who understood that the unlocking was going to require a response. Margaret came back in the morning at 7. She brought food and the specific, practical briskness of a woman who had processed everything that had happened overnight and had arrived at conclusions. She looked at Clara, still sleeping. She looked at Ethan, still in the chair. "You didn't sleep," she said. "I'll sleep tonight," he said. Margaret put food on the table. "The storm's broken," she said. "Mostly. I came across the South Road." She paused. "Ethan." He looked at her. "There were tracks on the East Trail," she said. "Fresh. 3 horses, maybe 4. They turned back at the ridge. They couldn't come through in the storm either. But they were out looking." He was quiet. "What do you know about the Whitmore family?" Margaret said. He thought about it. "Railroad money," he said. "One of the big eastern lines. They have holdings in 3 territories. The father died 8 months ago," Margaret said. She said it with the tone of someone who had been gathering information since before she walked in the door, which meant she had been gathering it for some time. "Under circumstances that weren't clear from what I heard. There was talk of it in Black Pine last October." "Talk of what kind?" he said. "The suspicious kind," she said. "The kind where the people with the most to gain were the ones managing the investigation." He looked at the sleeping woman, at the coat drying by the stove with the specific shape of something that had been through serious conditions and survived. "Her uncle," Clara said. They both turned. She was awake. She had been awake, he suspected, for some portion of the conversation. There was the quality in her eyes of someone who had been listening before they announced themselves. "I'm sorry," Ethan said. "We didn't mean to." "Don't apologize," she said. "I'd rather know what you know." She pushed herself up to sitting, which required visible effort, but she made it look like less effort than it was. "My uncle controls the company since my father died. He's been trying to get the document since before my father's funeral." "What's in the document?" Ethan said. She looked at the table where it lay. "Everything," she said. "My father was not a man who left things to trust. He had been watching the company's accounts for 2 years before he died. He believed someone was rerouting funds using the railroad operations to move money in ways that were not legal and not disclosed." She paused. "He had proof. He compiled it over 2 years. He put it in a document, and he gave it to me 3 weeks before he died." "He knew he was going to die," Margaret said. Clara looked at her, not startled, the look of someone confirming something they had already concluded. "He was worried," she said. "He didn't say he thought someone was going to kill him, but he was worried, and he was careful, and he gave me the document and told me to make sure it reached the right hands." "Whose hands?" Ethan said. "A government investigator in Helena," she said. "A man named Treadwell. My father had been in correspondence with him." She paused. "I've been trying to get to Helena for 3 weeks. The men my uncle sent have been a step behind me the whole way." She looked at the window. "Until the storm." "The storm put everyone behind everyone else," Ethan said. "It put me in your snow," she said. "Yes," he said. She was quiet for a moment. He said, "How many men?" "4 that I know of," she said. "Paid men, professional." She paused. "They had legal papers claiming I was incompetent to manage my own affairs and that my uncle had been appointed as my guardian by a friendly judge in New York." "Papers like that would hold in some jurisdictions," Margaret said. "They hold in the jurisdictions my uncle has purchased," Clara said. There was no bitterness in it. It was a plain statement, the tone of someone reporting a fact. "Here." She looked at Ethan directly. "I don't know what they hold here." "They don't hold here," Ethan said. She looked at him. "This is my property," he said. "And on my property, a legal paper from a judge in New York is a piece of paper from a city that's a very long way from Montana." He paused. "If 4 men come to this door with a document like that, they're going to have a conversation with me about what Montana Territory recognizes and what it doesn't. She studied him. "You don't know me," she said. "No," he said. "You don't know if any of what I've told you is true," she said. "You have my word and a document you haven't read." "That's correct," he said. "Then why?" she started. "Because I found you in the snow," he said. "And you asked me not to leave you there, and I didn't." He met her eyes. Whatever comes next is part of the same decision. She looked at him for a long moment. He held the look, not performing anything. He was not a man who performed. He was a man who meant what he said, and he had just said something true, and he waited for her to decide what she thought of it. Margaret in the corner was looking at the stove with the expression of a woman who was choosing not to look at the two people in the room, having a conversation that did not require her participation. "All right," Clara said finally. "All right," he said. "All right," she said. "Then we have work to do." She shifted in the bed as if preparing to get up, which she was in no condition to do. "I need to think about how we get the document to Treadwell and Helena, and I need to think about what happens when my uncle's men find this ranch." "They'll find it," he said. "Yes," she said. "When the East Trail clears," he said. 3 days, maybe 4. "That's not much time," she said. "No," he said. "But it's enough if we use it right." He stood up from the chair. "First you need to eat. Then you need to sleep properly. And then we'll talk about what comes next." "I don't need to be managed," she said. "You need to eat," he said. "That's not management, that's fact. You've been in a blizzard and your body is trying to recover, and it can't recover without fuel." He put food on the table within reach of the bed. "I'm not managing you. I'm telling you what my experience says." She looked at the food. She looked at him. "Your experience," she said. "You've done this before, brought someone in from the cold." "Once," he said. Something in his voice changed register barely just enough. She heard it. She did not ask about it. She reached for the food. He went to check on the horses because the horses needed checking, and because he needed a minute outside in the cold to process what was happening in his chest, which was continuing to do things he had not planned for. He stood at the fence and breathed. He thought about Anna. He thought about what Anna would have said to him if she had been here watching him carry a stranger through a blizzard and install her in the ranch house, and inform her that he would be dealing with whoever came for her. She would have said, "It's about time." She had been that kind of person. Practical about life in the way that people were practical when they understood that time was finite, and spending it on nothing was a waste that couldn't be recovered. He had been spending it on nothing for 4 years. He went back inside. Clara was asleep again, which was correct. She needed the sleep more than she needed anything else. Margaret was at the table with coffee. She said without looking up, "You know what you're getting into." "Yes," he said. 4 armed men," she said, "with legal papers and money and a powerful family behind them." "Yes," he said. "And her," Margaret said, "with a document and a story that might be entirely true and might be—" She paused. "Might be entirely true," he said. Margaret looked at him. "You believe her," she said. "I believe her," he said. "Because she asked you not to leave her in the snow," Margaret said. Not accusatory observational, the tone she used when she was identifying what was actually happening. "Because she carried that document inside her coat through a blizzard instead of dropping it to run faster," he said. "Because when she woke up, the first thing she said was her name, and the second thing she said was about the document, and the third thing she said was about the men." He paused. "A woman who was lying about what she had would be in a hurry to tell me the whole story. She's been telling me only what I ask for." Margaret considered this. "That's good thinking," she said. "Margaret," he said. She looked at him. "I need to ask you something," he said. "I know what you're going to ask," she said. "Will you stay?" he said. "The next few days, until this is resolved." Margaret Ellis had been a widow for 8 years. She had managed her own property for 8 years, with no son and no husband, and no family within a territory's ride. She had done it competently, and without complaint, and had developed over those 8 years a thorough understanding of what she would and would not do with her time. She looked at the sleeping woman. She looked at Ethan. "Yes," she said. "Thank you," he said. "Don't thank me," she said. "Make sure the coffee stays on." He made coffee. He sat at the table. He watched the document lying there in the low light, the weight of whatever was inside it. The thing that a woman had carried against her skin through a storm she almost didn't survive. He thought about what it would take to get it to Helena. He thought about 4 men with legal papers and a powerful family and the specific brand of certainty that came from believing that money made everything else negotiable. He had been called a lot of things in 15 years in Montana Territory. What he had never been called, not once, not by anyone who knew him, was someone who could be negotiated into looking away from something that was wrong. The man who had sent those 4 men into a blizzard did not know him. He was going to find out. He was going to find out beginning with the East Trail, which cleared on the second morning after the storm, not the third, as he had estimated, which meant the timeline had compressed, and the 4 days he had thought they had were now 2. Clara was up before he told her. He came in from the morning check to find her at the table with the document open in front of her, a cup of coffee at her elbow, and the expression of someone who had been working for an hour and was not planning to stop. She was still moving carefully. Her feet were not entirely right yet, and she had the deliberate quality of someone managing discomfort. But she was moving, and what she was doing with the time was not resting. He stopped in the doorway. She looked up. "Sit down," she said. "I need to explain something." He sat down. She told him what was in the document. Not the summary she had given him the first morning, the full version, the version his father had compiled with the dates and the amounts and the specific names. She had clearly been going through it since she woke and had organized it in her head the way he suspected she organized most things, which was thoroughly and in sequence. The fraud in the Whitmore Railroad Company had been running for 4 years. Her uncle, a man named Gerald Whitmore, who had been second in the company since its founding, and who had spent 4 years working to become first, had been rerouting freight revenue through a subsidiary that did not technically exist, which meant the money moved, but the record of where it moved to was obscure enough to require exactly the kind of 2-year investigation her father had conducted. The amounts were significant. The names attached were more significant. 3 government officials, Ethan said when she reached that part, in 3 territories. "Yes," she said. "Including one in Montana Territory," he said. "Yes," she said. "A man named Coburn. He's in Helena." She paused. "He is not the same man as Treadwell. Treadwell is the federal investigator my father was in correspondence with. Coburn is the person Treadwell would need to work around. So the person you're trying to reach is in the same city as the person who is being paid to stop him," Ethan said. "Yes," she said. "Which is why my father was specific about how the approach should be made." She pushed a page across the table toward him. He wrote instructions. He hid them inside the document in the middle of the financial records where they wouldn't look like instructions. He looked at the page. The instructions were written in a hand that was precise and unhurried, the hand of a man who had written important things before and understood that clarity was more valuable than elegance when the stakes were real. "Do not go to the Helena office directly. Treadwell will not be there. He operates through a private address. The address is below. Arrive on a Thursday. Treadwell meets with private parties on Thursdays. Do not send a letter first. Letters can be intercepted. Go in person. Show him the document. Tell him the name was Edward Whitmore, and he will know what that means. Below that, an address." Ethan looked at it. "Thursday," he said. "This Thursday is 4 days away," she said. "The next one is 11. 4 days is possible," he said, "if we leave tomorrow." She looked at him. "You're going with me," she said. It was not a question. "You're not going alone," he said. "Ethan." She said his name with the specific quality that people used when they were about to say something they thought he had not considered. "My uncle's men are between here and Helena. If we travel together—" "If you travel alone," he said. "You're one person with no backup. If you're stopped, the document is gone, and you have no witness." He paused. "If we travel together, you have someone who knows this territory, and someone who can account for both of us if someone tries to use legal papers." "Legal papers work regardless of witnesses," she said. "Legal papers work in the jurisdictions that recognize them," he said, "which is what I told you yesterday, and what I'm telling you again." He looked at the instructions. "Your father went to a great deal of trouble to create a path to the right person. I'm not going to let his daughter walk that path alone." She was quiet. She was looking at him with the expression she used when she was evaluating something not suspicious, not warm, something in between that was mostly analytical. He had been on the receiving end of it 4 times since she woke up, and he was beginning to recognize it as the expression she wore when she was deciding what something meant. "You said you lost someone," she said, "the first night, when I asked if you'd done this before." He had not expected her to return to that. "Yes," he said. "Your wife," she said. He did not ask how she knew. Margaret had been in the house for 2 days. Margaret talked when it was useful, which was usually. "Anna," he said. "I'm sorry," she said. "It was 4 years ago," he said. "That doesn't make it shorter," she said. He looked at the document on the table. "No," he said. "It doesn't." They were quiet for a moment. "She died in the winter," Clara said. "Fever," he said. "Not the cold." He paused. "I was here. I didn't leave her. We did everything that was available to do." He paused again. "It wasn't enough." "That's the worst kind," Clara said. He looked at her. "The worst kind is when there was nothing left to try," she said. "When you've done everything right and the outcome was wrong anyway. Because there's no point where you could have changed it, which means there's nothing to learn from it, which means you just carry it." He said nothing. "My father," she said. "I keep thinking about what I should have done differently, what I should have seen. But I was in New York and he was in Chicago, and by the time I understood what was happening..." She stopped. There was nothing left to try. The outcome was already wrong. He understood this. The specific grief of a thing that was over before you had the information to address it. "Clara," he said. She looked at him. "Your father gave you the document 3 weeks before he died," he said. "He gave it to you because he trusted you to do something with it. Whatever else was wrong." He paused. He was right about that part. She looked at the document. She was quiet for a long moment. "Yes," she said. He was. Margaret came in from the back at 8, with the specific quality of movement that meant she had information. "Rider on the East Trail," she said. 1. Moving slow. Scouting. Ethan was at the window before she finished the sentence. "You're sure?" he said. "I was at my property line getting feed when he passed," she said. "He didn't see me. He was looking at the trail conditions, not at the tree line." She paused. "He turned back north." "Reporting," Clara said. "Reporting to the other 3, Ethan said. "The trail is clear enough. They'll come tomorrow." "Then we need to go today," Clara said. He turned. She was already standing, already folding the document back into its case, already moving with the organized urgency of someone who had been waiting for the moment to act and had identified that this was it. "Today," he said. "If they come tomorrow, and we're not here," she said, "they lose a day looking for us. If they come tomorrow, and we're here..." "I know," he said. "Then today," she said. He looked at Margaret. Margaret said, "I'll get what you need." They were packed in 30 minutes. Ethan packed a ranch in 30 minutes. Not everything, the things that mattered for a winter ride and a confrontation, and the specific set of possibilities that this situation contained. Food for 3 days. Weapons which he packed with the matter-of-fact efficiency of a man who had been living in Montana Territory for 15 years and had no illusions about when they were necessary. Medicine because Clara was not at full capacity, and the cold had a way of finding weakness. Clara packed her own bag without being asked, and without assistance, which told him something he filed without comment. Margaret had the horses ready when they got to the barn. She had also packed her own bag. Ethan looked at it. "You're not coming," he said. "I'm coming as far as the Hendricks crossing," she said. "They know me there. I can send word to the county sheriff from Hendricks without it going through anyone connected to Coburn." She paused. "Your father said not to use official channels directly. He didn't say not to use them at all." He looked at her. "That's a 3-hour ride in January," he said. "I've ridden in January before," she said. "Several times." Clara looked at Margaret. "Thank you," she said. Margaret put her foot in the stirrup. "Don't thank me yet," she said. "Let's see how Thursday goes." They rode south. The first 2 hours were quiet, in the way that movement in cold country was quiet, not the absence of sound, but the dominance of it whined in horses, and the specific compression of cold air that made everything feel immediate. Ethan rode point. Clara rode at his left shoulder. Margaret rode behind, and they moved in the particular formation of people who have agreed on a direction and are executing it without needing to discuss it further. Clara rode well. This was the first thing he confirmed because it mattered practically, and also because it told him something about the woman. She sat her horse without performing competence. No extra movement, no unnecessary correction, no the kind of overactive horsemanship that came from someone trying to demonstrate skill rather than exercise it. She rode the way she did everything he was coming to understand directly, efficiently, without waste. At the 2-hour mark he pulled up. Clara pulled up beside him. He said quietly, "3 riders on the North Ridge." She did not look. "How far?" she said. "Far enough," he said. "They're not on the trail. They're watching from above." "They know we left," she said. "They know someone left," he said. "They may not know it's us yet. 3 riders heading south from this property could be any number of things." He paused. "We need to change direction." "The Hendricks crossing is south," Clara said. "The Hendricks crossing is south on the main trail," he said. "There's a line cabin 2 miles east that connects to a back road. It adds 4 hours." "We have 4 hours," she said. "Yes," he said. He signaled to Margaret, who was close enough to have heard the exchange and was already adjusting her position to follow. They went east. The line cabin was exactly what it sounded like. A structure built for the specific purpose of giving someone shelter and a decision point when the weather or the situation required it. Ethan had built it himself 6 years ago after a particularly bad spring, when he had been caught out by a late storm and had spent a night under a tree that he would not have needed to spend under a tree if there had been a structure. He unlocked it. Margaret went in first, assessed, it came back out. "Sound?" she said. "Someone's been using it. There's fresh wood stacked." "The Hendricks boys," he said. "They winter range cattle in this section. I gave them access. They went in." The fire took 4 minutes to establish. Clara sat at the table and opened the document again. He said, "You've memorized it." "Yes," she said. "Then why are you reading it?" he said. She looked up. "Because I'm looking for something I might have missed," she said. "There's a name that appears in 2 places that I can't resolve. A company called Meridian Holdings. It's referenced in 2 of the payment transfers, but there's no other context." She showed him the page. "My father was meticulous. If something is referenced without context, it's either a mistake or it's something he expected the reader to already know." Ethan looked at the name. "Meridian Holdings," he said. "You know it," she said. He thought. "There was a land development company with a similar name in Helena 2 years ago," he said. "They were buying properties along the proposed rail expansion corridor. They paid above market." He paused. "It was talked about in Black Pine because the company bought 2 properties from men I knew. Both men said they felt pressured, but the prices were high enough that they couldn't justify refusing." Clara looked at the document. "A holding company buying properties along the rail corridor," she said slowly. "If my uncle knew where the rail expansion was going to go before it was public information, he could buy through the holding company," Ethan said, "before the prices went up." And then the railroad gets the expansion contract, she said, and the land values triple, and Meridian Holdings sells at profit. Except nobody outside the company knows that Meridian Holdings is connected to the railroad company that just got the expansion contract, Ethan said. Because holding companies are designed to not be connected to anything you don't want them connected to. Clara sat back. That's not what my father documented, she said. He documented the internal fraud, the rerouting of freight revenue. He didn't know about Meridian. She looked at the page. He left me a thread. A thread to a different problem, Ethan said. A bigger problem, she said. The internal fraud is significant, but it's one company stealing from itself. The land scheme, she paused. That's federal land laws. That's insider information about government contracts. That's why the government official in Helena is on his payroll, Ethan said. Not just to protect the fraud investigation, to protect the land scheme. She looked at him. Yes, she said. Margaret, who had been making coffee and listening, said, if Treadwell is a federal investigator, the land scheme is actually more in his jurisdiction than the internal company fraud. Yes, Clara said. Then the thread your father left you is more important than the original document, Margaret said. Yes, Clara said again. Ethan looked at the document. He thought about a man who had spent 2 years building a careful record against his own family's company, who had been watching the accounts long enough to see not just the fraud he set out to find, but the edges of something larger, who had given his daughter a starting point rather than an ending point because he had run out of time and trusted her to follow it. He knew there was more, Ethan said. Clara looked at him. He was pointing you toward Treadwell, Ethan said. Not just to deliver the document, to give Treadwell the thread to pull. She was very still. I've been thinking about this wrong, she said. I've been thinking about getting the document to safety. My father was thinking about what Treadwell would do with it once he had it. Yes, Ethan said. He built me a key, she said. Not a conclusion. The fire crackled. Outside, the cold continued to be what it was. We need to keep moving, Ethan said. In an hour, Clara said. I need to write down everything you just told me about Meridian Holdings, including where you heard it from, whom, when. She already had a pen in her hand. Treadwell needs context, not just the document. The more context, the faster he can act. He watched her write. She wrote the way she did everything else, without waste, directly with the kind of organized urgency that suggested she had been preparing to do this her whole life, even though she hadn't known it. He thought about Anna. Not painfully, he was noticing that the thinking about Anna had been changing in quality since the night in the snow, and he did not know yet what to do with this observation, so he filed it alongside the other things he was not yet ready to fully address. He thought about what Anna would have made of Clara Whitmore. He thought she would have said, "That one's going to be fine, Ethan. That one knows how to get somewhere from here." He stood. He went to check on the horses. He needed the cold, and he needed the space, and he needed the specific clarity that came from standing outside in January, with your breath-making clouds and the world being what it was, rather than what you felt about it. He had spent 4 years feeling things he could not do anything about. He was standing on the edge of something he could do something about. That was not nothing. That was, he was understanding slowly the beginning of a different kind of life than the one he had been living on that mountain alone. He went back inside. Clara had finished writing. She looked up when he came in. "Ready," she said. "Ready," he said. They left the line cabin an hour after they arrived. The back road was worse than the main trail, and better than what the 3 riders on the North Ridge were going to deal with if they tried to follow, which was the calculation Ethan had made, and which appeared to be holding. No riders behind them. No riders ahead of them as far as he could see. They rode. At the Hendricks crossing, Margaret dismounted. She handed her horse's reins to Ethan. She looked at Clara. "You have what you need," she said. "Yes," Clara said. "You'll get there," Margaret said. It was not a prediction. It was a statement of assessment the way Margaret made most statements. "Thank you," Clara said. For everything. Don't thank me, Margaret said the same way she had said it the first time. Just make Thursday count. She went into the Hendricks building. Ethan watched the door close. He turned back to the road. She's going to write to the sheriff, he said, about the men on the North Ridge, about what they were doing on private land without authorization. Is that enough to slow them down? Clara said. It's another thing for them to manage, he said, which is better than nothing. She nodded. She looked at the road south. 3 more days, she said. 2.5, he said, if the weather holds. She looked at him. You said your wife's name like it was something you still kept close, she said. He was not expecting this. Yes, he said. She paused. That's what I want, someday. For someone to say my father's name like that. She looked at the road. Like it still matters that he existed. He thought about this. It will, he said. How do you know? She said. Because you're carrying his work through a blizzard to the one person who can make it matter, he said. That's how it happens. Someone carries something forward. He paused. Your father's name is going to be said like that. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Thank you. He said, Let's ride. They rode south. The road to Helena was long and cold, and full of the specific contingencies that winter roads in Montana Territory were full of, and neither of them knew yet what they would find at the end of it. And the men on the North Ridge were behind them somewhere with a head start of anger, if not information. But the document was in Clara's bag. The thread was in the notes she had written, and Ethan Callahan, who had spent 4 years on a mountain practicing the art of not needing anything to change, was riding beside a woman who had made not needing it to change untenable by the simple act of grabbing his coat in the snow. He was not entirely sure what that meant. He was entirely sure he was going to find out. He was entirely sure he was going to find out beginning with the second day on the road, which was when things stopped going according to any plan either of them had made. They had ridden without incident through the first afternoon and into the early evening, stopping at a way station that Ethan knew from previous years, a structure maintained by a ranching cooperative in that section of the territory, available to travelers who needed it. They had eaten. They had slept separately, and in shifts, with the same arrangement as the line cabin, one person watching while the other rested. He had watched first. When he woke her for the second watch, she was on her feet and alert in under 30 seconds, which was the same thing he had noticed in the line cabin, and which he noted again without comment. The second morning arrived cold and clear, which was the best and worst kind of winter morning in Montana. The clarity made the road faster and made the riders on it more visible from a distance in both directions. They had been moving for 2 hours when she said, Something's wrong. He pulled up. Tell me, he said. The way station, she said. When we arrived last night, there were 4 horses in the corral. Yes, he said. When we left this morning, there were 6, she said. He was off his horse and looking back down the trail before she finished the sentence. She was right. He counted the tracks in the soft snow at the edge of the road. Fresh tracks. The specific pressed snow quality of something that had passed in the past 2 hours. 2 horses coming from the direction of the way station moving south on the same road. They were there when we arrived, he said. They arrived after us, or they were already inside when we came in. Inside, she said. There were 6 horses when we left. That means 2 of them were in the barn, not the corral. We didn't check the barn. He hadn't checked the barn. He had been careful about the approaches and the road and the specific night sequence, and he had not checked the barn because the barn had been dark and quiet, and he had read that as empty. You checked the horses in the corral, she said. You counted them before you came inside. 4, he said. And you left the barn, she said. Yes, he said. She was not blaming him. He could hear the absence of blame in her voice. She was reconstructing the same way he was with the specific efficiency of 2 people who understood that knowing exactly what had happened was more useful than feeling bad about it. They were watching us, she said. 2 of them, in the barn. Yes, he said. They know what direction we're going. They know the road we're on. They're going to get ahead of us, she said. Cut us off before Helena. Or they're gonna follow until we stop and then have us from both directions, he said. If there are still 2 more behind us. She looked at the road. He looked at it with her. Helena was still a day and a half south. Thursday was the day after tomorrow. How far off the road can we go? She said. In this section, 3 or 4 miles east before we hit the creek, he said. Then we'd have to parallel the creek south, which is slower and rougher. How much slower? She said. 2 hours, he said. Maybe 3. We're still on time, she said. We're still on time if nothing else goes wrong, he said. She looked at him. Can you get us to Helena by tomorrow night on the east route? She said. Yes, he said. Then we go east, she said. He turned his horse. The east route was exactly what he had described, slower and rougher, the kind of riding that required constant adjustment and attention. The creek on one side and the tree line on the other, and the specific navigation of a path that was not a path but was passable if you knew where the ice was reliable and where it wasn't. Ethan knew. He had run cattle through this section twice in wet autumns when the road was impassable and the route had been committed to memory in the specific way that routes committed themselves when you had navigated them while also trying to manage 50 cattle in bad weather. He rode point. Clara rode behind him, following his line exactly, which meant she was watching his horse's feet and mirroring the adjustments without being told how which was exactly correct and which he noted without turning around. They rode for 4 hours. At the 2-hour mark, she said, "Are they behind us?" "I don't know," he said. "I haven't seen anyone. That doesn't mean they're not there." "How do we find out?" she said. "We don't," he said. "We assume they're there and we keep moving." At the 4-hour mark, the creek curved west in a way that put them back toward the main road, and he made the turn because the main road was faster and because 4 hours of east route travel, had he estimated, put enough distance between them and the men who had been following from the way station to make the main road viable again. He was wrong. Not about the distance, about the men. The 2 he had been watching for behind him were not behind him. They were ahead. He saw them at the same moment they saw him. 2 riders stopped on the road, positioned in the way that men positioned themselves when they were waiting for something to arrive, rather than moving somewhere themselves. They were 200 yards out, far enough to be unmistakable, close enough to read the intent. He pulled up. Clara pulled up beside him. "The 2 from the way station," she said. "Yes," he said. "They circled around," she said. "They knew the road," he said. "They knew there was only one place to come back onto it." She looked at the 2 men. She looked at Ethan. "If we go back," she started. "The other 2 are behind us," he said. "4 directions," she said. "Yes," he said. "What do we do?" she said. He looked at the 2 men ahead. He looked at the road. He thought about the specific mathematics of a situation where retreat was not available, and the path forward was blocked. Then he pressed Henry forward. "What are you doing?" she said. "Riding toward them," he said. "Ethan." "Stay with me," he said. "Exactly with me." She pressed forward. The 2 men ahead watched them come. They held their position, which was the response Ethan had expected. Men with legal papers did not pull weapons first when they were trying to do something that was technically within the law. They waited to see whether the person approaching was going to comply, because compliance was cleaner than the alternative. He was not going to comply. He was, however, going to talk. He stopped Henry 20 feet from the 2 men, and he looked at them with the expression he had developed over 15 years of dealing with difficult situations on a Montana mountain, calm, direct, without the edge that provoked and without the submission that encouraged. "Afternoon," he said. The man on the left, who appeared to be senior, based on the way the man on the right was looking at him for cues, said, "Ethan Callahan." "That's right," Ethan said. "We have papers," the man said. He produced them, folded, official-looking, the kind of document that was designed to look like more authority than it actually was. "Relating to the woman traveling with you," She's under the legal guardianship of Gerald Whitmore, who, Montana Territory does not recognize the guardianship appointment of a New York judge for a competent adult woman who is a resident of this territory, Ethan said. The man blinked. He had not expected that sentence. Ethan had prepared it. The territorial statute on guardianship, Ethan continued, requires a hearing in this territory's court with the subject present and represented before any such appointment is recognized. Miss Whitmore has not been before any court in this territory. Therefore, the papers you're holding are not enforceable here. The man looked at his partner. His partner looked at the papers. Clara beside Ethan said nothing. He could feel her stillness, the specific, contained quality of a person who had understood what he was doing and was giving him room to do it. The territorial statute, the man said. Where does that come from? The legislative session of 1882, Ethan said. It was passed in response to a case in Billings where a woman's property was seized under an out-of-territory guardianship order. If you'd like, I can give you the case reference. He did not actually have the case reference. He had heard about the statute from Margaret Ellis 3 years ago when she had been worried about her own situation after her husband died, and there had been questions about her brother-in-law's ability to make claims on her property. Margaret had investigated thoroughly and had reported her findings to Ethan. Because that was what Margaret did. She found information, and she gave it to the people she trusted. He had retained it. He was using it now. The man with the papers was uncertain. Uncertain men with papers were different from certain men with papers. Uncertain men evaluated their options. Uncertain men were sometimes open to a different version of the situation. We're going to Helena, Ethan said, to speak with a federal investigator. That's not a crime in any territory. If Mr. Whitmore believes his papers are valid, he's welcome to bring that argument to a Helena court where it can be evaluated under territorial law. And if we accompany you, the man said. I can't stop you from riding on a public road, Ethan said. But Miss Whitmore is under no obligation to go with you, and any attempt to physically compel her would be an assault on a resident of this territory which is prosecutable. He paused. If you'd like to accompany us to Helena, you're welcome to. There's a federal investigator there who would probably be very interested to meet you. The two men looked at each other. The man on the right said quietly to the man on the left, Garrison didn't say anything about a federal investigator. The man on the left, who was apparently Garrison, or was reporting to Garrison, said nothing immediately. Ethan waited. He was very still. Clara was very still beside him. The two men were making a calculation about whether the authority they had been given extended to a confrontation with a federal investigation, which was, Ethan suspected, a calculation that would resolve in the direction of caution. It did. We'll be watching, the man on the left said. I expect you will, Ethan said. Good afternoon. He rode forward. He rode directly between the two men, which required them to separate to let him pass, which they did. And Clara rode behind him, and they went south on the road toward Helena, and did not look back. A quarter-mile down the road, Clara said, You don't know if any of that is accurate. The statute is accurate, he said. Margaret did her research. But the specific details, she said. The specific details sounded accurate, he said, which is often enough when someone is uncertain. She was quiet. Then, case reference from the legislative session of 1882. I may have added that detail in the moment, he said. She looked at him. Something shifted in her expression, not the analytical look, not the careful evaluation. Something that was lighter than both of those, and had warmth in it. That was, she started. The other two are probably still behind us, he said. We should ride. She rode, but the expression stayed on her face for the next mile, and he did not mention it, and it was not nothing. They reached Helena on Thursday morning at 7. They had pushed hard through Wednesday afternoon and into the evening, stopping only when the horses genuinely needed the rest, and Clara had not complained once about the pace which had been demanding. She had kept up, had kept herself upright, had been alert on her watches, and efficient on her brakes, and Ethan had revised his understanding of her physical capacity upward twice since the line cabin. The city was startling after 3 days of open territory. Not the size of it. He had been to Helena before, and it was not large as cities went. The specific density of it after mountain country, the sounds and the people, and the way the streets had buildings on both sides that blocked the horizon. He was not bothered by it, but he was aware of the adjustment his senses were making. Clara, he noticed, navigated it without the adjustment. She had grown up in places like this, larger probably. The movement of people on a city street was familiar to her in a way it was not to him. "The address is 7 blocks east," she said. She had it memorized. She had written it down in the line cabin and had been reading it intermittently since. "We find a livery first," he said. "Then we go." "We don't have time. We have 2 hours before Treadwell's Thursday availability," he said. "The horses need water and feed and 15 minutes of rest. We take care of them. We wash our faces and we arrive at that address looking like people who have a message worth hearing, rather than people who have been riding for 3 days in Montana winter." She looked at him. "You're right," she said. "I know," he said. They found a livery. They took 20 minutes. She found water and washed her face and did what she could with her appearance, which was, he admitted to himself with complete impartiality, quite a lot. She had the quality of a woman who looked like herself, regardless of circumstances, which was not a quality that could be manufactured. He washed his own face and straightened his coat and assessed himself in the livery's small mirror with the practical judgment of a man who knew his own limits. He looked like someone who had been riding through Montana winter. He looked like someone who had something serious to say. Both of those were accurate. They walked to the address. The building was not what he had expected. He had expected something that looked official, a government building, a formal office, something that announced itself. What he found was a private residence on a residential street, maintained and quiet, with nothing on the outside to indicate what happened inside. He knocked. A woman answered. 50s, precise, with the expression of someone who had been answering this door for a long time and had developed efficient ways of assessing who was standing outside. Clara said, "My name is Clara Whitmore. My father was Edward Whitmore. I'm here to see Mr. Treadwell." The woman looked at Clara. She looked at Ethan. She said, "Come in." They came in. The inside was not an office. It was a library, 2 walls of books, a desk that occupied one corner, 2 chairs across from it. It had the quality of a room where serious conversations happened regularly, and the furniture had been arranged to facilitate them. The man at the desk stood when they came in. He was perhaps 60, with the bearing of someone who had spent his career paying attention to things that required concentration. He looked at Clara with the recognition of a man seeing something he had been anticipating without being certain it would arrive. "Miss Whitmore," he said. "Mr. Treadwell," she said. "Your father wrote to me twice," he said. "The second letter arrived 6 months ago. He said if something happened to him I should watch for you." He paused. "I've been watching for 2 months." Clara was very still. "He knew," she said. "He was worried," Treadwell said. "As I told him, there is a difference between knowing and being able to prove. He was building toward proof." He looked at the bag she was carrying. "Do you have it?" "Yes," she said. She put the bag on the table. She put the document on the table. She put the notes she had written in the line cabin on the table beside it. Treadwell looked at the notes. He looked at Ethan. "This isn't from your father's documentation," he said. "No," Clara said. "That's additional, about Meridian Holdings." She paused. "My father referenced the name in the document. Mr. Callahan provided context." Treadwell looked at Ethan. "Ethan Callahan," Ethan said. "Callahan Ranch, Black Pine Ridge. I found Miss Whitmore in a blizzard 3 days ago and got her here." Treadwell looked between them. "The men following her," he said. "4 of them," Ethan said. "Gerald Whitmore's people. They have guardianship papers from a New York judge." "Worthless here," Treadwell said. "That's what I told them," Ethan said. Treadwell almost smiled. "How much trouble are they going to cause before I can act?" he said. "That depends on how quickly you can act," Ethan said. Treadwell sat down. He pulled the document toward him. He began to read. They sat and they waited. He read for 40 minutes. During those 40 minutes, Clara did not speak. She sat with her hands in her lap, and she watched Treadwell read, and Ethan watched her watching, and what was on her face was the specific expression of someone at the end of a long effort, at the point where the outcome was no longer in their hands, waiting to see if the effort had been enough. He recognized the expression. He had worn it himself years ago, in a different context at the end of a different kind of effort that had not been enough. He hoped this one was different. Treadwell finished. He set the document down. He looked at the notes. He read the notes for 15 minutes. Then he looked at Clara. "Meridian Holdings," he said. "Yes," she said. "Your father found the thread," he said. "He didn't have time to pull it." "No," she said. "The internal fraud documentation," he tapped the original document, "is substantial. With the context you've added about Meridian, the land acquisition scheme becomes visible." He paused. "Your father built me a case. You brought me a second one." Clara was very still. "Is it enough?" she said. "It's considerably more than enough," he said. She put both hands on the table. She looked at them. She was not going to cry. He could see the decision not to being made in the set of her jaw. But something had released in her that had been held for a long time, and the release of it was visible in the way a dam releasing was visible not in the water that came through, but in the change of pressure on everything around it. "The men following her," Ethan said to Treadwell. "How quickly can you move?" "I can file the investigative warrant today," Treadwell said. "That puts Gerald Whitmore and his associates under federal jurisdiction immediately. The men following Miss Whitmore become a federal obstruction matter rather than a private family dispute." He paused. "The guardianship papers become void." "Today," Ethan said. "Today," Treadwell said. "And Coburn," Clara said. Treadwell looked at her. "You know about Coburn," he said. "My father's document references him indirectly," she said. "And I've been thinking about why a territorial official would be on Meridian's payroll." "To protect the land acquisition records from review," Treadwell said. "Yes." He paused. "Coburn is going to be a second matter. The warrant today addresses Whitmore and the immediate threat to you. Coburn requires more careful handling." "But he will be handled," Clara said. "He will be handled," Treadwell said. Clara nodded. She picked up the document from the table, not to take it back to hold it. She held it for a moment with both hands, the way you held something that had traveled a long distance with you and had arrived where it needed to be. "Mr. Treadwell," she said. "Yes," he said. "My father's name was Edward Whitmore," she said. "He built his company from a single rail line in 1864. He was a good man." She set the document back on the table. "I want you to make sure that's on the record when the rest of it is." Treadwell looked at her. "It will be on the record," he said. "I promise you that." She stood. Ethan stood. "The men who followed us are in this city," Ethan said to Treadwell. "At minimum 2 of them. They may have lost us on the east route, but they know where we were going." "I'll have them located before I file the warrant," Treadwell said. "So they can't dispose of any materials when they see it coming." He looked at Ethan. "Where will you be?" Ethan looked at Clara. "The Ames Hotel is reliable," she said. 2 blocks north. "I'll send word when the warrant is filed," Treadwell said. "Stay there until you hear from me." They went to the Ames Hotel. He got them 2 rooms because that was appropriate and because Clara was not the kind of woman you made assumptions about, and they went upstairs, and for the first time in 3 days, both of them were in a place where the situation did not require one of them to be awake. He sat on the edge of the bed in his room. He did not sleep immediately. He sat, and he thought about the past 3 days, and what they had been, which was the first time in 4 years that he had been actively engaged in something that was not the routine of a single life on a mountain. The first time in 4 years that he had been doing something that was not about managing what he had lost, but about preventing someone else from losing something more. He thought about Anna. He thought about her the way he had been thinking about her since the snow, not the full weight of grief which had been the consistent quality of thinking about her for 4 years. Something more like the feeling of carrying something you'd been carrying a long time that had started to feel like its right weight, which was lighter than the wrong weight but still real. She was not here. That was not going to change. But he was here. And he had ridden 3 days through Montana winter with a woman who carried her father's work against her skin and argued for truth in front of men with guns, and sat in a federal investigator's library, and made sure her father's name would be on the record. And he had not been a man on a mountain alone. He had been present, engaged, necessary. He had not known until this week how much he had missed being necessary. He slept. He was woken at 3 in the afternoon by a knock. 2 knocks. He was at the door before he was fully conscious. Clara. She had the expression of someone who had received news. Treadwell filed the warrant, she said. 2 hours ago. Gerald Whitmore is being contacted in New York by federal authorities. The men in Helena. She paused. The 2 men from the way station are in federal custody. The other 2 haven't been located yet. They'll be located, he said. Yes, she said. She looked at him. The document is in federal hands, she said. My father's work is, she paused. It's going where it was supposed to go. Yes, he said. She stopped. I've been holding this for so long. The document, the journey, the purpose of it. And now I've handed it to the right person, and the right process has started, and she paused again. I don't know what I do now. He looked at her. He understood this feeling, the specific disorientation of a person who has been defined by a task, and has now completed the task. He had felt it in a different context after Anna died, the disorientation of a person who has been a caregiver and is no longer who has organized their entire existence around a purpose that no longer requires organization. You go back, he said, and you figure out what comes next. Back where, she said. He was quiet. You have a ranch, she said, and I have, she paused. A process, a long legal process. And an inheritance that I don't know what to do with yet. You don't have to know yet, he said. No, she said. She looked at the hallway behind her. She looked at him. You rode 3 days through Montana winter for a woman you found in the snow, she said. Yes, he said. Why, she said. Specifically. He looked at her. He thought about Anna, who had never asked a question she didn't want the real answer to. He thought about 3 words said with the last available strength. Because somebody should have done it for me once, he said. She looked at him. Not with the analytical expression, not with the careful evaluation. With the expression of a person who has heard something true and is deciding what to do with it. Who should have done it for you, she said. He looked at the wall. Different situation, he said. Different kind of leaving. Someone I couldn't bring back from something that couldn't be fixed. He paused. But I think I've been in the snow for 4 years, and nobody came. She was very still. Ethan, she said. We should eat something, he said. It's been since this morning. She held his gaze for one more moment. Then she said, You're right. We should eat. She went back to her room to get her coat. He stood in the doorway of his room, and he thought about what he had just said. He had not planned to say it. He had not known it was true until it came out. But it was true, and the truth of it sitting there after 4 years felt like not relief exactly. More like the moment after you've been carrying something a long way, and you've set it down somewhere that can hold it, and what you feel is not the absence of weight, but the first awareness of what you're like without it. He went to get his coat, and the act of getting his coat, of putting it on in the room of a Helena hotel, while the federal investigation his wife's work had set in motion was running in an office 2 blocks away, was the first act in what felt like a different version of his life than the one he had been living. He was not certain yet what that meant. He was certain that it was true. They ate at a small restaurant 3 streets from the hotel. The kind of place that had good food and no interest in its customers' business, which was exactly the kind of place that suited both of them. Clara ordered without looking at the menu, the habit of someone who knew what she needed and did not spend energy on decisions that weren't important. He ordered the same. They ate without performing conversation. This had been one of the consistent things since the blizzard. The way the silences between them were not uncomfortable. He had noticed it the first night at the ranch, when she had fallen asleep, and the room had been quiet, and he had not felt the specific pressure of that quiet that he sometimes felt in the presence of people who expected him to fill it. She did not expect that. She was comfortable in the quiet, the way competent people were comfortable in quiet, because they had enough going on inside themselves to not need external noise to fill the space. He had been the same way once, before Anna died. After the quiet had been the wrong kind, not peaceful, not productive, just empty. The specific empty of a house where someone used to be. He was thinking about this not carefully the way you thought about things you weren't ready to examine directly when she said, "My uncle is going to fight this." He looked at her. "Gerald," she said, "he's not the kind of man who accepts the first reversal. He's going to find lawyers and arguments, and he's going to try to make the process as slow and expensive as possible." She looked at her coffee. "He has resources." "Treadwell has the document," he said. "Yes," she said, "but there are documents, and there are courts, and there are years between one and the other." She paused. "I want to be honest with you about what this is." "All right," he said. "This is not finished," she said. "What happened today? Treadwell getting the warrant, the men in custody. That's the beginning of something, not the end of it. I am going to be in legal proceedings for a long time. I am going to be in Helena for a long time, probably. I am going to need to be available for the investigation, for depositions, for the kind of sustained attention that a process like this requires." She paused. "I'm telling you this because you got me here, and I don't want you to think that getting me here was the end of your obligation." "I don't think obligation," he said. She looked at him. "What do you think?" she said. He thought about how to say it plainly. "I think I found someone in the snow who needed help," he said. "And I helped. And then the situation required more, and I did more. And now we're here, and the document is where it needs to be, and the question of what comes next is—" He paused. "It's not a question of obligation." "Then what is it a question of?" she said. He was quiet for a moment. "I've been on that mountain for 4 years," he said, "alone, running the ranch, doing the work, not looking for anything to change." He paused. "I told you last night that I'd been in the snow for 4 years, and nobody came." "Yes," she said. "You knocked," he said. She was very still. "Not literally," he said. "The blizzard knocked. You were the person on the other side of the door." He paused. "But I'd been waiting for something to knock for a long time." She looked at him. That's a significant thing to tell someone you've known for 3 days," she said. "Yes," he said. "And you said it anyway," she said. "You asked me," he said. "You asked me specifically. I told you I didn't answer questions I wasn't prepared to answer accurately." "You didn't say that," she said. "I implied it," he said. She almost smiled. Not the full version, the almost version, the one that arrived when something had caught her genuinely off guard. "I'm going to be in Helena for months," she said. "Maybe longer." "I know," he said. "You have a ranch in Black Pine Ridge," she said. "I do," he said. "That's 3 days' ride," she said. 2.5 in better weather," he said. She looked at her coffee again. He looked at his. "I'm not going to be someone you need to rescue again," she said. "I want to be clear about that. What happened in the blizzard I was in, over my head in a situation I couldn't control. That's not who I am normally. I can take care of myself." "I know that," he said. "You don't know me well enough to know that," she said. "I know it from 3 days," he said, "which has contained enough evidence." He paused. "You managed the watches without being asked. You identified the problem at the way station that I missed. You knew the address by memory, and you organized your father's documentation under pressure in a line cabin." He paused. "I know you can take care of yourself." She was quiet. "Then what is this?" she said. He looked at her. "I don't know yet," he said. "I'm being honest about that. I'm not—" He paused. "I'm not a man who makes declarations when he doesn't know what he's declaring." He paused. But I would like to come back to Helena. When? She said. 2 weeks, he said. I need to get back to the ranch. There are things I've left. He paused. Margaret. Margaret, she said. She stayed at the ranch when we left, he said. She's managing things, but she has her own property. I can't leave her indefinitely. 2 weeks, Clara said. Yes, he said. She looked at him with the evaluating expression. He waited. All right, she said. All right, he said. 2 weeks, she said. I'll be here. I'll have met with Treadwell again by then, and I'll know more about what the process looks like. She paused. Come back, and I'll tell you what I know. And if the process is going to take longer than you thought, he said, then we decide what that means, she said, when we have more information. He nodded. He thought this was probably the most accurate version of what could be said at this point, which was not a love declaration in a restaurant in Helena 3 days after a blizzard, but was also not nothing, and was also honest, which was the thing that mattered most to him. All right, he said. Good, she said. She picked up her coffee. He picked up his. Clara, he said. She looked at him. Your father, he said. What was he like? She was quiet for a moment. Then she talked about her father. Not the document, not the fraud, not the things he had done in the last 2 years of his life to protect something for his daughter. The man himself. What he had been like when she was a child and the company was young and he was still more interested in building something than in protecting it. The way he talked about the first rail line which he had laid with 12 men in the summer of 1864, as if it were a living thing he was fond of. The way he kept a photograph of that first rail line on his desk next to the photograph of her mother. She talked for 20 minutes. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, she was quiet for a moment. Thank you, she said. For what? He said. For asking, she said. He nodded. She understood what she had said to him the previous night about wanting someone to say her father's name the way you said the name of someone who still mattered. He had given her that. He had asked about the man rather than the document. She had not expected it. She was adding it to the list of things she had not expected about Ethan Callahan. The list was getting long. He left Helena the following morning. He had stayed one night more than he had planned. Treadwell had asked him to provide a written account of what he had witnessed regarding the men following Clara, which he had done, and which had taken longer than expected, because Treadwell's assistant was thorough and asked follow-up questions. He had also checked twice with the federal office to confirm that the 2 remaining men from Gerald Whitmore's team had been located and they were being held under federal jurisdiction, which meant Clara was no longer in immediate danger of being apprehended by anyone claiming guardianship authority. The 4 men were accounted for. The warrant was in effect. The document was in federal custody. He said goodbye to Clara in the hotel lobby. Not with drama, neither of them were dramatic people, and the situation did not call for performance. She was going to Treadwell's office that morning for a second meeting. He was going home. 2 weeks, she said. 2 weeks, he said. She held out her hand. He shook it. Her grip was firm and direct, and held for exactly the length that was appropriate, and released cleanly, which was exactly how she did everything. Thank you, she said, for all of it. You would have gotten there without me, he said. Maybe, she said, but not on Thursday. He acknowledged this. Get some sleep, he said. You've been running on Will for 3 days. You too, she said. He went to the livery. He rode home. The ride back was different from the ride south. He had time to think, which he had not had on the South Road, and he used it, which he always did when time was available. He thought about the document and the process, and the specific shape of what was going to happen over the next months, which was not going to be simple for Clara, and which he could see clearly enough to understand that what she had said was accurate. It was not finished, and it was not going to be finished quickly. He thought about 2 weeks. He thought about what 2 weeks looked like at a ranch in Black Pine Ridge in January, the specific work of winter, which was its own kind of necessary, the cattle that needed attention, the fencing that had been deferred since November, the supply run that needed to happen before the late winter storms closed the road again. He thought about Margaret. He arrived at the Ellis property before he arrived at his own because the road went past Margaret's gate first, and because Margaret was someone you checked on when you had been gone for 4 days in Montana winter. She was in the barn. She looked up when he came in. "The document," she said. First thing, no preamble. "In federal custody," he said. "Warrant issued Thursday afternoon." She sat back on the stool she had been using to work on something. She did not say anything for a moment. "Good," she said. Then Clara. "Safe," he said. "In Helena, working with the investigator on the next steps." "She's staying," Margaret said. "For the foreseeable future," he said. "The process is going to take a while." "And you," Margaret said. He looked at the barn wall. "I'm going back in 2 weeks," he said. Margaret was quiet. Then she said, Well, he said. "The coffee's on," she said. "Come inside." He went inside. She made him eat, which was the thing Margaret did when someone had been through something difficult, and she wanted to address it without talking about it directly. She made him eat, and she put coffee in front of him, and she sat across the table with her own cup, and she said carefully, "How is she?" He thought about the question. "Capable," he said. "Organized. Carrying a lot." He paused. "She talks about her father the way you talk about someone who you're not done knowing yet." Margaret was quiet. "You like her," she said. "Yes," he said. "That's not what I was asking," she said. He looked at her. She looked at him with the expression she used when she was waiting for him to catch up to something she had already seen. "I'm going back in 2 weeks," he said. "I heard you say that," she said. "That's the honest answer to what you're actually asking," he said. She looked at her coffee. "All right," she said. "The fence on the south quarter needs attention. I've been keeping an eye on it." She paused. "And you need to eat more than you have been. You look like you've been surviving instead of living." He did not point out that this had been accurate for 4 years. She knew. She was telling him that she knew he knew, and that she had noticed the change, and that the change was the right direction. He went to his own ranch the following morning. The house had the quality it always had when he had been gone for more than a day, the specific stillness of a place that had been waiting not unpleasantly, but noticeably. He built the fire. He checked the horses. He did the morning work that needed doing, which was the same work it was every morning, but which felt today slightly different. He could not entirely identify the difference. He thought about it while he worked. He thought it had something to do with the fact that there was a specific point in the future toward which he was oriented. 2 weeks. Helena. A woman who would be there when he arrived, who had told him she would be there, and who he believed without analysis, because she was the kind of person who said what was true. He had not been oriented toward a specific point in the future for 4 years. He had been managing the present. The present needed managing. It always needed managing, and the ranch was real work that required real attention. But managing the present as the whole of what you were doing was different from managing the present while also knowing there was a future you were moving toward. He made coffee. He sat at the table. He thought about Anna. He did this every morning. He had done it every morning for 4 years, the specific ritual of thinking about her in the early morning before the work started, which was the time when everything was clearest and the cost of things was most visible. He thought about her with the quality the thinking had been taking on since the blizzard. Not lighter exactly, more situated. As if the grief had found its right position, which was real and present, and his, but was no longer the only thing in the room. He thought about what she would have said. She would have said, "Go back in 2 weeks, Ethan. Don't make her wait longer than you said." He thought about how she had always been more sensible than him about timing. He thought about a document carried inside a coat through a blizzard. He thought about 3 words said with the last available strength. He thought about the specific quality of someone who organized her father's documentation in a line cabin under pressure, and made sure his name would be on the record when everything else was. He drank his coffee. He went to work. The 2 weeks passed with the specific pace of productive time, not slow, not fast, but full. He repaired the south quarter fence, which took 3 days. He did the supply run, which took 1. He went through the account books that had been waiting since November, and found 3 things he had been deferring, because deferring had felt like sufficient response, which it had not been, and he addressed them. He talked to Margaret twice. The first time she asked how he was. He said he was all right. She said that wasn't what she asked. He said he was better than he had been. She said she knew that. The second time she came by the ranch with food, and they sat at his table, and she said without introduction, "I knew Anna for 4 years. I know what you lost." He said nothing. "I also know," she said, "that she was not the kind of person who would have wanted the losing to be the whole of what you did with the rest of your life." He looked at the table. "I know that," he said. "I know you know it," she said. "I'm saying it anyway, because sometimes it needs to be said to you by someone who knew her." She paused. Anna was practical. She loved you, and she was practical, and those 2 things were not in conflict. "No," he said. "They weren't." "Then be practical," she said. "Go to Helena. Figure out what this is." He went to Helena on the 14th day. He had told her 2 weeks, and he arrived on the 14th day, not the 15th or the 16th, because he had said 2 weeks, and that was what he meant. The Ames Hotel desk clerk recognized him. He went upstairs. He knocked. She opened the door. She had been working. There was paper on the table, and a pen, and the organized spread of someone in the middle of something. She looked at him with the expression that was not the evaluating one, and not the warm one, but something that encompassed both the expression she had been developing over the time he had been in Helena, that he did not have a name for yet. "You came on the 14th, she said. "I said 2 weeks, he said. 14 days is 2 weeks, she said. "Yes," he said. She stepped back from the door. He came in. She closed it. She told him what had happened in 2 weeks. Treadwell had moved quickly. The initial warrant had been followed by a secondary investigation of Coburn, whose financial records, once subject to federal review, had told a very clear story about the nature of his arrangement with Meridian Holdings. Coburn had been suspended pending a formal hearing. 2 of Gerald Whitmore's associates had entered plea agreements in exchange for testimony, which had significantly accelerated the central case. Gerald Whitmore's lawyers had filed 3 motions. 2 had been dismissed. The 3rd was pending. "The Meridian connection is the strongest part," she said. "Treadwell told me yesterday that the land acquisition records, combined with what you told him about the properties in the Black Pine section, have opened 3 additional investigations in other territories." "Because the same pattern," he said. "The same pattern," she said. "Different territories, same method." She paused. "My father's 2 years of work opened a door that was much larger than he knew." "He knew it was larger than he could finish alone," Ethan said. She looked at him. "Yes," she said. "He did." She sat down. He sat across from her. "How are you?" he said. "I've been working," she said. "That's not what I asked," he said. She recognized the reversal of her own question. "Tired," she said. "But it's good tired. The kind you have when you've been doing something that matters." She paused. "I went to the records office yesterday to verify the Meridian land registrations. I found 4 more properties than Treadwell's team had located." She paused. "The archivist asked me if I was a lawyer." "What did you tell her?" he said. "I told her I was my father's daughter," she said. He nodded. "How is the ranch?" she said. "The south quarter fence is repaired," he said. "I got the accounts current. Margaret has been keeping an eye on things." "She's a good woman," Clara said. "She is," he said. "She sent something with you," Clara said. "Not a question." He looked at her. He reached into his coat and produced a jar of preserves and a note. Clara took both. She read the note. She laughed. It was the first time he had heard her laugh. Not a small sound. Real laughter. Genuine, the kind that arrived when something caught you fully off guard. "What does it say?" he said. She handed it to him. Margaret's handwriting. "You're both sensible people. Try to remember that while you're being dramatic about everything. The preserves are for your breakfast. I made them in September. M." He looked at the note. He looked at Clara. She was still smiling. He thought about what Anna would have said about Margaret Ellis. She would have loved her. "She's right," Clara said. "We're being dramatic. We've been through a blizzard and a federal investigation," he said. "That's allowed." "Yes," she said, "but not indefinitely." She looked at him. "Ethan?" "Yes," he said. "I want to tell you something," she said. "And I want to tell it to you directly because you're a person who receives direct things better than indirect ones." He waited. "When I was in the snow," she said, "I was not thinking clearly. I couldn't. I was too cold. But the thing that got me to your door was that I saw the light." "Yes," he said. "I want to tell you what that felt like," she said, "because I don't think you know." He held her gaze. "I had been running for 3 weeks," she said. "I was exhausted, and I was frightened, and the horse was gone, and I was alone in a blizzard, and I had been telling myself for 3 days that I was going to make it through, and I was running out of ability to tell myself that." She paused. "And then I saw the light. And I moved toward it, not because I was certain it meant safety, but because it was the only thing I could see. And when I got there, and you opened the door..." She paused. "You were going to close it. I could see you were going to close it. I could see it in the way you were standing." "Yes," he said. "And I grabbed your coat," she said, "because it was the last thing I had." "Yes," he said. "And you didn't close the door," she said. "No," he said. "I want you to understand," she said, "that the fact that you didn't close the door is the most important decision anyone has made on my behalf in a very long time." She paused. "Not because it saved my life. Because it means there is a person in the world who, given the choice to close the door, doesn't close the door." He was very quiet. "Ethan," she said. "Yes," he said. "I've been managing alone for 8 months," she said. "Since my father died. Managing the documents and the men and the road and the purpose of all of it. I've been managing alone, and I've been good at it, and it's been the right thing to do." She paused. "But I don't want to manage the next part alone." He looked at her. "The next part," he said. "The process," she said. "The months of it. And then what comes after when the process is done, and I have an inheritance to decide what to do with, and a father's name on a record, and a life that has been on hold for 8 months. She paused. "I don't want to manage that alone." "Clara," he said. "You asked me what this is," she said. "You asked me in the restaurant, and I said we'd decide when we had more information." She paused. "I have more information." "Tell me," he said. "This," she said, "is the beginning of something I don't have a complete description for yet. But the beginning is real." She held his gaze. "I'm not asking you to give me a complete description either. I'm asking if the beginning is real for you too." He looked at her. He thought about Anna, who would have said, "Don't be an idiot, Ethan. Answer her." He thought about a woman who carried her father's work against her skin through a blizzard. He thought about 3 words. He thought about the light he had kept burning for 4 years without knowing why. "Yes," he said. She breathed. Not dramatically, just the specific release of breath that happened when something you had been holding landed where it was supposed to. "All right," she said. "All right," he said. Outside, Helena continued its January business. Inside, in the room above the Ames Hotel, 2 people sat across a table that had a jar of Margaret Ellis's September preserves on it, and looked at each other with the expression of people who had survived a blizzard and 3 days of Montana winter and a federal investigation, and had arrived somewhere that was neither the mountain nor the road, but was they were both understanding the beginning of a place. "You need to stay for a few days," she said. "I know," he said. "Treadwell wants to speak with you again," she said, "about the Black Pine Ridge properties. He thinks there may be more to document from that area. I'll speak with him, he said. And I need to show you something I found in the records office, she said. About Meridian. There's a property adjacent to yours that was acquired in 1883 that I think... Tomorrow, he said. She stopped. He said, tonight we eat a proper dinner, and tomorrow you show me the records. She looked at him. Is that reasonable? He said. She considered it. Yes, she said. That's reasonable. Good, he said. He stood. He put on his coat. She put on hers. They went to dinner. Not to the restaurant from the first visit, a different one she had found in the 2 weeks she had been in Helena, that had better food and the same quality of disinterest in its customers' business. They ate. They talked. Not about the investigation, not about the process, not about Gerald Whitmore, or the warrant, or the properties in the records office. They talked about the ranch, and about her father, and about Margaret, and about what Clara had been doing in Helena in 2 weeks that was not investigation-related, which was more than he expected, and which revealed that she had been doing in the spaces between the work what she did everywhere, paying attention. She had learned the names of the people at the records office. She had found a bookstore 2 streets from the hotel. She had identified the best coffee in a 6-block radius. She had been building knowledge of a place, which was what she did and what she had done on his ranch in the 2 days before they left, and which meant that she was not someone who moved through places without making them real to herself. He noticed this. He noted it without comment. When they were done, they walked back to the hotel. At the door, she said, 2 weeks was the right amount of time. For what? He said. For me to have something real to tell you, she said. About the process. About what this is going to look like. She paused. And for you to get the south quarter fence fixed, apparently. It needed to be fixed, he said. I'm sure it did, she said. She was looking at him with the expression that was not the evaluating one. Clara, he said. Yes, she said. He said, I want to come back here. After the investigation. When the process is what it's going to be long term. You said that, she said. I'm saying it more specifically now, he said. When the immediate part is settled, and you know what you're doing with the inheritance, and the name is on the record, I want to come back and I want to have a different kind of conversation than the conversations we've been having. She looked at him. What kind of conversation? She said. A longer kind, he said. About what comes next. Both of us. She was quiet. Both of us, she said. Yes, he said. That's a significant thing to tell someone you've known for, she calculated. 18 days. You said that when it was 3 days, he said. It works for any number. She looked at him. And then she laughed again. The real laugh, the one that arrived when something caught her off guard. He stored the sound of it with the specific care that he stored the things he intended to keep. All right, she said. Come back when the process is what it's going to be. I will, he said. And in the meantime, she said, if Margaret sends more preserves, I'd appreciate it. I'll tell her, he said. She went inside. He stood at the door for a moment. He thought about a mountain in Black Pine Ridge. He thought about a light he had kept burning for 4 years. He thought about a woman who had been moving toward it through a blizzard and had arrived at the door and had asked him not to leave her there. He thought about opening the door and about the specific, irreversible right decision that had been. He went to his room. He slept well. For the first time in 4 years, with nothing chasing him and something ahead of him. He slept the way you slept when you were not just surviving, but actually genuinely living. For the first time in 4 years, with nothing chasing him and something ahead of him, he slept the way you slept when you were not just surviving, but actually genuinely living. And that quality of sleep changed something in him that he had not known needed changing, which was the specific baseline of what he expected a day to hold. He woke up expecting something. He had not woken up expecting something in 4 years. He lay in the hotel room for a moment and recognized this for what it was, which was not a small thing. Then he got up and went to look at Clara's records from the records office, because she had said she needed to show him something, and she was not a person who said she needed to show you something without meaning it. She had left a note under his door at some point before he woke. It said, "Breakfast first, then the records. My father's rule was that you couldn't think clearly on an empty stomach." He was right. See. He went to breakfast. She was already there. She had coffee waiting, which was the same thing as the first morning at the ranch when he had come in from the horses to find it on, and which had the same quality not performed, not a statement, just the practical acknowledgement that coffee in the morning was necessary, and she had made enough for two. He sat down. "What did you find in the records?" he said. "After breakfast," she said. He looked at her. "My father's rule," she said. "You just applied your father's rule to me," he said. "Yes," she said. "I barely knew him," he said. "I know," she said. "But the rule is good, regardless." He ate breakfast. After she spread the records documents on the table, what she had found was a property adjacent to his north fence line, a parcel of 40 acres that had been acquired by Meridian Holdings in the fall of 1883, which was 2 years after the proposed rail expansion corridor in Montana Territory had been surveyed and 1 year before the corridor's route was officially announced. The timing was consistent with every other Meridian acquisition she and Treadwell had documented purchased in the window between the internal knowledge of the route and its public announcement. "This is 40 acres on my fence line," he said. "Yes," she said. "I've been seeing that parcel go fallow for 2 years," he said. "The previous owner sold in a hurry. I thought it was a personal situation." "It may have been," she said, "but Meridian paid above market, which usually means the seller felt pressure to accept, rather than being pleased to get the price." He looked at the record. "The previous owner," he said. "Thomas Garrett." "You knew him," she said. "Enough to know he didn't want to sell," he said. "He had been improving the property. He had put in a new well the summer before. Men who are preparing to sell don't put in new wells." "Which is consistent with pressure," she said. "Yes," he said. "Treadwell needs to speak with him," she said. "If Garrett will testify to what happened, the pressure the above market offer, the circumstances of the sale, it adds another property to the Meridian pattern in Montana specifically. It also adds another name," Ethan said. "A local name. Someone the territorial court knows." "Exactly," she said. He was quiet. "Garrett moved south," he said. "He wrote me once the following spring. He's near Billings." He paused. "I can find him." Clara looked at him. "You'll find him," she said. "When I go back," he said, "I'll find him, and I'll write to Treadwell with whatever Garrett is willing to say." She was looking at him with the expression that was not the analytical one. "You're building the case," she said. "The case is built," he said. "I'm giving it better foundation." "That's not a distinction most people would make," she said. "My wife used to say that the difference between something that holds and something that collapses was whether you'd checked the foundation," he said. "She was talking about the barn we were building, but it applies." Clara was quiet. "I'd like to hear about her," she said. "If you want to tell me." He looked at the records on the table. He thought about this. He had not told people about Anna since the first year after her death when people had asked, and he had answered, because he hadn't yet learned that answering cost more than the alternative. After the first year he had stopped talking about her, not because he wanted to keep her private, but because talking about her in contexts that were not equipped for what she actually was had made her feel smaller than she was. Clara was equipped. He knew this from 18 days of evidence. She was practical, he said, in a way that some people found off-putting because they expected sentiment instead. She wasn't sentimental, she was accurate. He paused. She saw what things were very clearly. Not harshly, just clearly. She had no patience for pretending something was other than it was. "She sounds like she would have been very efficient to work with," Clara said. He almost smiled. "That's exactly the right thing to say about her," he said. "Is it?" She said. "She would have liked that description," he said. "She would have said most people think efficiency is cold, but efficiency is just accuracy plus action, which is not cold at all." Clara said nothing. She was listening with the specific quality she brought to things that mattered. "She died of fever," he said. In March, 4 years ago. I was here. We did everything that was available to do. He paused. It wasn't enough. And I have made peace with that, or something close to peace, in a way that took a long time and which is... He paused again. Which is not gone, but which is its right size now. It's the right size to carry. Yes, Clara said. That's exactly what it is. He looked at her. Your father, he said. The same, she said. It took me a long time to stop thinking I had failed him. I was in New York and he was in Chicago, and I didn't know what was happening until it was too late to stop it. And I spent a long time with that. She paused. And then I understood that the thing he gave me to do was not about undoing what happened to him. It was about making sure what happened to him was not the end of the story. And, he said. The story is not ended, she said. No, he said. Edward Whitmore built a rail line in 1864 with 12 men, she said. That rail line is still operating. The people who worked it are still working it. The towns it connects are still connected. She paused. What his brother tried to do was take what he built. What I'm doing is making sure that what he built goes forward under the name it was built under. Ethan said, that's why his name matters, on the record. Yes, she said. He understood. Not abstractly, specifically. The way you understood something when you had enough of your own version of it to recognize the shape. He said, when Anna died, I sold the original ranch. The one we had built together. I couldn't be in it. He paused. I've been thinking about that. Lately. About whether it was the right choice. Was it? She said. I think so, he said. The Black Pine place I built it after. It's mine in a different way. Not hers, and mine just mine. He paused. But the original ranch is still operating. The family I sold it to has expanded it. When I rode past it last fall, there was a new barn where the old corral had been. He paused. And I thought that's right. It should be being used. It should be going forward. Clara said, Anna would have agreed with that. Yes, he said. She would have said selling was the practical decision, and the ranch going forward is what it was built for, not being a monument. She sounds like she was very clear about how things should work, Clara said. She was, he said. I would have liked to know her, Clara said. Not performed honest the way she was honest about most things. He looked at her. Yes, he said. You would have. Treadwell met with Ethan that afternoon. The meeting was focused and efficient, which Ethan appreciated. Treadwell was a man who did not waste a meeting. He asked specific questions about the Black Pine Ridge properties, and Ethan answered them with the specific detail of a man who had been watching his section of Montana for 15 years. He described what he knew about Garrett and the North Fence parcel. He described the two ranchers he had mentioned in the original documentation, both of whom had sold to Meridian after above-market approaches. Treadwell listened. He took notes. When they were done, he said, "You should know something." Ethan waited. Gerald Whitmore's lawyers filed a motion yesterday to have the federal warrant suspended pending a jurisdictional review, Treadwell said. It will not succeed, I have considerable confidence in that, but it will take 6 to 8 weeks to be formally dismissed. Which means the investigation is on hold during that time, Ethan said. Which means the primary proceedings are delayed, Treadwell said. The secondary investigations, the Montana properties, the other territories, those continue. But the central case against Gerald Whitmore himself is paused. Clara knows this, he said. I'm telling her after you, Treadwell said. I wanted your read on what it means for the situation first. He thought about it. It means Gerald Whitmore is buying time, he said. He knows the case is solid. He's using his lawyers to extend the timeline and increase the cost. Yes, Treadwell said. He can't win that way, he said. The document doesn't change. The Meridian records don't change. Time doesn't help him. No, Treadwell said. But it makes things more expensive and more draining for the people on the other side. Who are? Clara, Ethan said. Primarily, Treadwell said. Yes. He was quiet. Can she stay in Helena for 6 to 8 weeks? He said. The investigation requires it, Treadwell said. The secondary filings need her available for ongoing documentation review. He paused. It would be helpful if she had support. He looked at Treadwell. Treadwell looked back with the expression of a man who had been doing his job for a long time and had learned to observe things without saying them directly. I understand, Ethan said. He left the office. He went back to the hotel. He knocked on Clara's door. She opened it. She looked at his face. Treadwell told you, she said. Yes, he said. He's going to tell me next, she said. Yes, he said. She stepped back. He came in. She was not visibly distressed. She had the expression she wore when she was managing something difficult with the specific efficiency she brought to management. But there was something underneath the management that he had learned to read the thing that showed at the edges of the efficiency when the thing being managed was larger than usual. 6 to 8 weeks, she said. Yes, he said. She guetes. His lawyers filed yesterday, she said. He must have known the warrant was coming. He had this prepared. Yes, he said. He's not going to win this way, she said. I know, he said. He knows it too, she said. He's just making it, she paused. Expensive, he said. Yes, she said. She sat down. Not with defeat, with the specific posture of someone recalculating a timeline. 6 to 8 weeks, she said. In Helena. Yes, he said. The ranch, she said. You can't leave the ranch for 6 to 8 weeks. He looked at her. I can be here more often than I'm there for 6 to 8 weeks, he said. She looked at him. That doesn't make practical sense, she said. The ranch requires consistent attention and occasional intensive periods. He said, Margaret can provide the consistent attention. I can be in Helena for stretches and return for the intensive periods. He paused. I've been doing this math for the past hour. While you were with Treadwell, she said. Yes, he said. You were supposed to be providing documentation about the North Fence parcel, she said. I was providing documentation about the North Fence parcel and doing this math simultaneously, he said. It's not difficult math. She looked at him. The expression on her face was doing the thing it did when something caught her off guard, and was also something she was pleased about. Ethan, she said. Yes, he said. You don't have to, she started. I told you, he said, that I wanted to come back and have a longer kind of conversation about what comes next. Both of us. He paused. This is the longer conversation. She was quiet. He said, My father was a man who said that the only decision that mattered was the one you made when it cost you something. Easy decisions didn't prove anything. He paused. I'm staying for 6 to 8 weeks because Gerald Whitmore's lawyers are trying to make things expensive, and because I am not going to let that tactic cost you more than it costs him. She held his gaze for a long moment. That's the most words you've said at once, she said. I've been practicing, he said. She laughed. The full laugh, the one he was learning, was real. He thought, I want to hear that for a long time. He did not say this. He filed it. All right, she said. 6 to 8 weeks. I need to go back twice, he said. Brief trips, to find Garrett and to handle things at the ranch. But Helena is the base. Helena is the base, she said. Yes, he said. She stood. She held out her hand. He shook it. She did not immediately release it. She held it for 3 seconds longer than the handshake required. He did not pull back. She let go. Dinner tonight, she said. The restaurant from the first night. Yes, he said. And tomorrow, she said. I want to show you what I found about the 1882 Meridian Incorporation records. There's something in the founding documentation that Treadwell hasn't seen yet. Tomorrow, he said. He went to write a letter to Margaret. He wrote her a letter that explained the situation and asked her to manage the ranch for the next stretch, which she would do without complaint, and would probably do better than he had been doing it, because Margaret was thorough in ways that he sometimes was not. He told her that Garrett was near Billings and that he would find him on his way back through. He told her he would be in Helena for a while. He did not tell her everything the letter contained in implication. He didn't need to. Margaret would read the letter, and she would understand everything he had not said, and she would send preserves, and she would write back something brief and direct that told him she knew what was happening, and approved of it without making a ceremony of the approval. He knew her well enough to predict this exactly. The 6 weeks that followed were the most different 6 weeks Ethan Callahan had spent since the years before Anna died. They were not easy weeks. Easy had nothing to do with it. Treadwell's investigation required constant availability. There were meetings and documents and the specific ongoing work of a federal case building toward trial, and Clara was at the center of it in the way that the person who had brought the original document was at the center of any such process. She was in Treadwell's office 3 mornings a week and in the records archive 2 afternoons, and she worked at the hotel in the evenings with the organized intensity of someone who had decided to be useful to this process for as long as it required her to be useful. Ethan went back twice. The first time he found Garrett in Billings, who was willing to testify, and who had it turned out kept records of the Meridian approach in a box under his bed because he had not trusted the smoothness of the transaction and had the instinct which proved correct that written records of the offer and the conditions under which it was made might matter later. He sent Garrett's contact information and a summary of what he had to offer to Treadwell, which Treadwell received and acted on within a week. The second time he went back for a cattle situation that required him specifically dealt with it in 4 days, and rode back to Helena because he had said he would, and because the specific quality of returning to Helena was different from any return he had made to anything in 4 years. He was returning to something rather than returning from something. That distinction was not small. Between his returns to Black Pine Ridge, he was present in Helena in the way he had been present nowhere since the original ranch he had built with Anna. Present in the specific sense of being engaged with what was in front of him rather than managing the space between himself and it. He and Clara ate dinner together most evenings. They talked about everything about the case, about the ranch, about Garrett's testimony, about what Clara was finding in the records that continued to reveal connections she had not expected, about her father, about Anna, about Margaret, who wrote letters that were brief and direct and always contained one line that was more pointed than anything else, which was Margaret's method. Margaret's 4th letter contained the line, "The South pasture cattle are fine. The fence is holding. You sound different in these letters than you have in 4 years. Don't ruin it by overthinking. M." He showed it to Clara. She read it. She said, "She's remarkable." "Yes," he said. "Do you overthink things?" She said. "I used to," he said. "Before Anna died, I thought everything through very carefully. After I stopped thinking about anything except what was directly in front of me, because thinking further required expecting things to be there. And now," she said. "Now I'm thinking further again," he said. She looked at him. "What are you thinking?" she said. "About the ranch," he said. "In the spring. What it looks like in the spring. Whether," he paused, "whether you'd like to see it." She was quiet. "Ethan," she said. "After the proceedings," he said. "When the primary case resolves, which Treadwell thinks will be March or April after the jurisdictional motion is dismissed." He paused. "I'd like to show you the ranch in the spring." "The south quarter fence," she said. "It's repaired," he said. "The cattle," she said. "They're currently managed by Margaret," he said, "but they're mine." She looked at him. "I'd like to see it in the spring," she said. He nodded. "And before that," she said, "I want to tell you something." "All right," he said. She looked at the table. "I've been thinking about what to do with the inheritance," she said. "When the case resolves and the company is restructured, and the assets are distributed according to what my father actually wanted." She paused. "There are families who were affected by Meridian. Not just the ones who appear in the documents. There are others who sold under similar conditions who weren't part of the formal pattern. People who were pressured into decisions they regret." "Yes," he said. "I want to establish something," she said. A fund, to help those families, not to buy back the land that's not always possible and not always what they need, but to address the financial harm. She paused. My father built something. Gerald tried to take it. What I want to do with what comes back to me is use it the way it was supposed to be used. He looked at her. Your father built a rail line with 12 men, he said. Yes, she said. You're going to build something that helps the people his brother's operation harmed, he said. Yes, she said. He started. I know what he would say, she said. Not dismissing him, the expression of someone who had thought about this so many times that they knew the full landscape of it and did not need it narrated. He would say it's the right use. He would say it's the thing that makes the work mean something beyond him. Yes, he said. I want to know what you think, she said. He looked at her. I think, he said, that it's exactly what someone who has been paying attention to what matters would decide to do. He paused. And I think Thomas Garrett would probably like to be one of the first people you contact. She held his gaze. Yes, she said. She sat with it. He sat with it with her. He thought about the specific quality of sitting with someone and thinking alongside them rather than alone, and the difference between the two, and the fact that he had not had the former in 4 years and was now recalibrating what he expected from a day. Ethan, she said. Yes, he said. When you went back to the ranch the second time, she said. The 4 days you were gone. Yes, he said. I noticed, she said. The specific quality of Helena while you were not in it. He looked at her. I'm telling you that directly, she said, because you receive direct things better than indirect ones. Yes, he said. The quality was... She paused. Not that nothing happened. Things happened. Treadwell had a development and I was in the archive and the work continued. She paused. The quality was that I was managing it alone in a way that was different from the way I was managing it before you arrived the second time, and I prefer the second way. He was quiet. Clara, he said. Yes, she said. I want to tell you something, he said. And I want to say it directly, because you said direct things are better. Yes, she said. He said, when Anna died, I told myself I was preserving something by staying alone on the mountain, that the quiet and the distance were how I honored what we had. He paused. But what I actually did was stop. I stopped participating in anything that was real enough to cost me something. And that's not honoring anything. That's just stopping. She was very still. You didn't stop, she said. I did, he said. Until the blizzard. Until you knocked. You opened the door, she said. I opened the door, he said. And the 3 weeks since have been... He paused. They've been the first 3 weeks since Anna died that I've been fully present in. Not managing the day. Actually in it. She held his gaze. I want to tell you, he said, because you told me that you noticed the quality of Helena when I wasn't in it. And I want you to know that I notice the quality of everything when you're not in it, which is a different quality than I was living in before. She said nothing. She was looking at him with the expression that was not any of the ones he had been cataloging. It was a new one. He did not have a name for it. He thought he might have more time to learn its name. The spring, she said. Yes, he said. I want to see the ranch in the spring, she said. And I want you to show me where Anna used to be, and I want you to tell me about her, because she's part of what you are, and I want to know what you are. He was quiet. Yes, he said. And I want to show you Chicago, she said. At some point, where my father's office was, where I grew up. She paused. Because that's part of what I am. Yes, he said. We're doing this, she said. Whatever this is, we're doing it. Yes, he said. I need you to say it more than once, she said. Because I've been doing things alone for 8 months, and saying yes once is not enough for me to believe it. He looked at her. Yes, he said. I'm doing this with you. Whatever it requires and however long it takes and wherever it goes. He paused. Yes. She breathed, the specific breath of someone who has received something they needed and are letting it land. All right, she said. All right, he said. The jurisdictional motion was dismissed in March. Treadwell sent a note at 7 in the morning. He put it under Clara's door. She knocked on his door at 7:15. He was already awake. She said, "It's dismissed." He said, "I know." She said, "The trial is scheduled for May." He said, "That's fast." "Treadwell has been ready since January," she said. "He's been waiting for the lawyers to run out of motions." She paused. "Gerald Whitmore's legal team has requested a conference. They want to discuss terms." "Terms," he said. "He's going to try to make a deal," she said. "Treadwell will advise me. But he told me last week that the document and the Meridian records are strong enough that a deal would have to be very favorable to us to be worth taking." "Is it?" he said. "We'll see what they offer," she said. "But Ethan, the important thing is that the investigation into the individual property cases continues, regardless of what happens to the Central Whitmore case. The families Garrett and the others, that proceeding is separate. It goes forward." He looked at her. "Yes," he said. "Whatever Gerald does to try to manage his own outcome," she said. "The harm he caused is on the record. The people affected are documented. The process continues." "Yes," he said. She was looking at him with the expression he had been learning. "My father's name is on the record," she said. "Edward Whitmore," he said, directly, the way you said someone's name when they mattered. She looked at him. "Yes," she said. "Edward Whitmore, who built a rail line in 1864 with 12 men and spent 2 years gathering the truth about what was being done to his company and trusted his daughter to finish it." "She finished it," he said. She held his gaze. "We finished it," she said. He did not correct her, because she was right. It was the specific kind of right that two people produced when each of them brought what they had, and it was more together than it had been separate. 3 months later in June, Clara Whitmore rode into Black Pine Ridge on a gray morning with the specific quality of early Montana summer. Cool, still the grasses coming in the sky, doing what the Montana sky did in June, which was every possible thing at once. She had seen Chicago in April after the trial, which had concluded with a plea agreement that Treadwell had assessed as favorable, given what it secured for the families. Gerald Whitmore would not walk away easily. The Meridian scheme was fully documented. The property cases were being addressed one by one. Ethan had met her in Chicago. He had seen the office where her father had worked, which was now under the management of a trustee, while the restructuring proceeded. He had seen where she had grown up. He had sat across from her at a restaurant in Chicago and thought, "This is the person, and this is what we're doing, and it is real." She had come to Montana for the spring. He had said he would show her the ranch. He showed her the ranch. She walked every fence line. She assessed the cattle with the specific attention of someone who was learning something new and intended to understand it completely, which she confirmed by asking questions that demonstrated she had been reading about Montana cattle operations since March. He did not say anything about the reading. He answered the questions. "The south quarter fence," she said at the south quarter fence. "Repaired in January," he said. "I know," she said. "You told me." She put her hand on it. "It's good work." "It was straightforward," he said. "Your work is always straightforward and always good," she said. "Those aren't the same thing." He said nothing. She looked at the pasture. "Show me where Anna used to be," she said. He took her to the north side of the property, where there was a stand of pine that had been there long before him. Anna had liked to sit there in the late afternoons. He had built a bench at the base of the largest tree because she had mentioned sitting there often, and he had wanted to give her somewhere to do it properly. The bench was still there. Clara sat on it. She was quiet for a moment. He sat beside her. "She chose good things to like," Clara said. "Yes," he said. "The view from here is—" She paused. "Everything," he said. "In every direction." She used to say it was the most honest view on the property because there was nothing in the way. Clara looked at the view. She said, "I want to build something here." He looked at her. "Not literally here," she said. "The property. I want to," she paused. "The fund I'm establishing. For the families. I've been thinking about where to base the administration of it. Helena is where the legal work is, but Helena is a city." She paused. "The families who were affected are mostly in rural territories, ranch country, mountain country." He waited. "Black Pine Ridge is central," she said. "It's a day's ride from Helena. It's accessible from 3 territories." She paused. "If I were going to establish something here, an office, a point of contact for the families coming through the process, this is where it would make sense." He looked at her. "You're asking to be in Black Pine Ridge," he said. "I'm describing a practical arrangement," she said. "You're being very careful about how you're describing it," he said. She looked at him. "Yes," she said, "because what I'm describing is a practical arrangement, and also," she paused. "Also," he said. "Also," she said, "I want to be where you are." He said nothing. She said, "That's direct." "Yes," he said. "Too direct," she said. "No," he said. She looked at the view from Anna's bench. "I've been running toward things for 8 months," she said. "I ran toward your door. I ran toward Treadwell. I ran toward the trial and the deal and the fund and the next thing." She paused. "I want to stop running toward something and be somewhere." He looked at her. "I want to be here," she said. He reached out. He put his hand over hers on the bench. She turned her hand over and held his. They sat on Anna's bench in the stand of pine and looked at the view that was everything in every direction and nothing in the way, and he thought about a woman who had said yes to every honest request he had ever made of her, including the request to be remembered well. She was remembered well. She was in this moment with them, the way people were present when they were held by the people who loved them. He said, "The house needs another room." She looked at him. "If there's going to be an office," he said, "and you're going to be here, it needs another room." He paused. "I'm a carpenter. I can build a room." She said, "You said that very practically." "I'm a practical man," he said. She said, "So am I." "You're a practical woman," he said. She looked at him. "Yes," she said. "Build the room." Margaret was at the fence when they came back. She had apparently found a reason to be at her own fence line that happened to border the Callahan property, which was not an accident, and which she did not bother to pretend was an accident. She looked at Clara. She looked at Ethan. She said, "Stay for dinner." Clara said, "Yes, please." Ethan looked at Margaret, and Margaret looked at him with the expression of a woman who had known him for 6 years and had watched him live on a mountain in a state she would not have chosen for him, and who was now looking at something she would have chosen. He said, "Is that elderberry or blackberry?" "Elderberry," she said. "You never pay attention." "I pay attention to some things," he said. She looked at Clara. She looked at him. She said, "About time." Then she went to make dinner. Montana Territory did not pause for any of this. It continued being what it was, enormous and indifferent and demanding and beautiful in the specific way that places were beautiful when they were honest about what they were. The ranch continued. The cattle continued. The process in Helena continued. The families of the Meridian properties continued their slow movement toward resolution, and in the Black Pine Ridge country, a cowboy who had been alone on a mountain for 4 years, and a woman who had carried her father's work through a blizzard, built a life together with the specific combination of practicality and honesty that both of them had learned was the only foundation worth building on. He built the room. It took 3 weeks. When it was done, she stood in the doorway of it and said, "It's good work." "It's straightforward," he said. "Those aren't the same thing," she said. Again. The same thing she had said at the South Quarter fence. He was learning that she said true things more than once, not because she doubted him, but because she believed that true things deserved repetition. He thought she was right about that. "Ethan," she said from the doorway of the room he had built. "Yes," he said. "You found me in a blizzard," she said. "Yes," he said. "And you didn't close the door," she said. "No," he said. "You should know," she said, "that the door you didn't close—" She paused. "Yes," he said. "It was the right door," she said. "Whatever was on the other side of it." He looked at her. He thought about Anna, who had told him once that the only decision that really counted was the one you made when you had enough information to make a different choice and chose what you chose anyway. He had opened the door when he could have closed it. He had ridden 3 days through Montana winter when he could have gone home. He had come back to Helena on the 14th day when he could have come on the 15th. He had built the room. He had chosen this every time he had the chance to choose differently. That was not luck. That was not accident. That was the kind of decision that built a life. And the woman standing in the doorway of the room he had built, who had carried her father's work through a blizzard and said 3 words with the last strength she had and changed everything about what he was doing with his remaining time on this earth, was the reason he had finally started making them again. The cowboy who had stopped living had found more than a stranger in the snow. He had found his way back, and he was not going to close the door again.